Hey everyone.
Wow.
Steve, why would some days, for no reason, you just be hungrier than other days?
I don't know. Depends on how much you've eaten recently, how much physical activity you've had, how much you've slept.
What does that have to do with it?
Because if you don't sleep well, your body actually releases hormones that makes you hungry.
Why? That sucks.
Okay, welcome to Wednesday,
We're talking over here.
I know we're starting over. Wednesday, September 18th, 2024. On today's episode of the Wednesday live stream, whatever, we're going to talk about global cooling, nuclear war. Oh, the parasites you'll see.
Oh, shit.
RF not okay, Jr., and flooding.
Flooding. Yep.
Some of these actually might be...
Those are the TikToks.
Most of these are actually TikToks.
I think those are all the TikToks.
So we'll talk about other things and then do them as a TikTok.
I was trying to talk about other things.
I know. Okay, well, now I can shut off the music and you can talk about whatever you want. Go ahead. This is the Skeptics Guide to the Universe, by the way. There you go. Boom.
There you go.
Go ahead.
We are a science podcast.
I noticed that stress is directly connected to how well I sleep.
Yes.
Like my sleep quality.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And there's really nothing you could do about it.
Well, there are things you can do about it.
Well, like
yes, if you have emotional stress, what it can cause your brain basically to be active at nighttime when you should be falling asleep. Like you can't turn your brain off. You can't stop thinking about the things that you're stressed out about.
Yep.
So yeah, I've occasionally every 6 months or a year or so have those sleepless nights because something really stressful is happening. But there are things you can do about that in terms of just sleep hygiene. It's important to make sure that you
drink a lot of alcohol. Right?
Well, you should keep.
Hey, what? Hello.
You should make sure you empty your bladder. Don't eat right before you go to bed. Do relaxing activities,
meditation,
low light levels. Before
reading,
you go to bed.
No screens,
thinking.
Yeah, no close-up screens, and then. If you're laying in bed, tossing and turning, mind is wired, and you can't fall asleep, get out of bed. The best thing to do is to go sit up and do something relaxing, reading, distracting. And then when you start to feel like you're nodding off, then get back into bed. But you don't want to just be fighting and tossing and turning.
It sucks to get out of bed, though. They say to do these things, and they don't realize just how hard it is.
I know. I'm just saying but those are things that you could do. But yeah, I know. Occasionally you get those nights where you hardly sleep at all for whatever reason.
It's terrible.
It happens.
So for patrons, by the way, there's a new feature on Patreon, which is like a chat/audio only version of what we're doing right now. So I just started that for this stream. So if you got the notification, you're already here. There's a couple people here that are just listening to the audio. So it's like a audio only version. So there you go. So we're on all the platforms as we can be.
It's funny. One of the listeners was like, "Why are you guys talking about this weird stuff on the show?"
No,
like
I responded.
And I know it's like that was the live stream. That
Yeah.
wasn't the podcast.
Yeah.
You know,
They thought that you and I were just doing the podcast alone.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, that, and also they complain. It's like, and then all of a sudden you were talking about eating beans out of a can,
Yeah, I
and you're
know.
like, and that just lost me. I was like, well, okay, I mean, fair. I guess it wasn't that good, but
You know, I don't know
But
if
please, that wasn't the show.
I know. Please,
Yeah.
that
I
was
don't
just
know if
me.
anybody out there that's listening to this like does any content creation. You get lots of weird emails. It's weird how people like certain people like don't pick up on certain things,
Yeah.
right? And it's very
Well, the thing
odd.
is, that's part of that's just the odds. We have so many listeners that someone's going to have a bad night, whatever, bad day, and misinterpret what you're saying, or they're in a bad mood or whatever. And then, yes, there are some people out there who, have particular belief systems or perspectives or whatever, and we happen to get under their skin or to trigger them in some way. So you're going to get every kind of response.
That's true.
If you have a big enough audience. Right, but having said that, most of our emails are great.
Oh, they're
Yeah,
great.
they're
Very,
great.
they're fun, they're
99%.
insightful.
We have
they
great people.
Yeah, but then there's the occasional, just contrarian emails or completely misunderstanding what we were saying, or like we triggered their pseudoscience.
Yeah, something
we
happened.
triggered their true belief, and they just attack us, for whatever. It was just before I came down here, I was in an email exchange. The guy's very nice, very reasonable, but he was basically criticizing my talk about solar panels and residential
that,
solar.
yep.
And I responded to him, "Oh, what exactly did I say that you disagree with, blah, blah, blah? What do you think about the science of climate change is unsettled?" And he responded with basically a standard, global warming denial position, all the standard things. Essentially regurgitating a boatload of anti-global warming propaganda. So it's like that's where he was coming from.
Right.
And so, but he was being polite, so I politely corrected him back, and we'll see what happens. But that's what we're dealing with as well. We're always happy to give advice to people before they email us, because most people who are emailing us are giving us advice, so I feel like it's fair for us to give them advice in return.
Yeah.
The big one is check your straw men. Like really,
Watch out.
Be fair that what you're saying is fair. It's basically what we call the principle of charity. And you should do this in general, not just when emailing us, not just when emailing podcasters or other people or sending in editorials or whatever. When you're addressing someone else's position, it's always a good idea to be as fair as possible in terms of your interpretation. What's tempting, though, is to substitute for that other person's opinion some cardboard prefab opinion that you are already primed against. You know what I mean? It's like you're not really responding to me. You're responding against this sort of cardboard boogeyman that you've been programmed to respond to.
Right.
But it's easier to argue.
But it's
against that.
easier because you're already loaded. It's
Right.
like, you're just slotting the person into a position and then attacking that position rather than really engaging with what they're actually saying.
I haven't had this happen to me more than since I've been posting a lot about politics.
Yeah.
Because people,
'cause people go
assume
crazy.
the absolute worst.
Yes.
The absolute worst case of and it's remarkable to me that I go to people. I'm like,
It's all tribal.
I'm
that's
not.
why.
I tell them I'm not a Democrat.
Yeah.
I'm independent.
Yeah.
I am a moderate. Politically, I'm moderate, and they're like. They like can't accept
Yeah.
that I'm not a
Does not
dyed in the wool
compute.
Yeah, I'm like
Because if you disagree with them, you're all the way on the other
You have
side.
to be,
There's
yeah.
nothing in between.
it's too bad. It's too
Yeah.
bad because like you can have good conversations with people if they could just get past all that. That's,
Right. The other thing is, and again, like if I could, like, get rid of one type of email or get everyone who's going to email us, I could put this into their brain, is just to avoid the ad hominems. Because if you send an email where you're basically saying you're this, you're that, basically telling us how we are, rather than addressing our arguments or our positions, there's nothing for us to say. It's like, you're being dismissive. So how? Tell me exactly what I said that was wrong. right? Again, it's not unreasonable for us to ask that of people who are going out of the way to email us or to give us feedback. Just labeling us with negative terminology is totally useless. First of all, it doesn't have any effect other than catharsis. What do you think you're accomplishing when you do that? What's ironic is that for a lot of people who are attempting to sort of defend a position or criticize what they think our position is, they're actually criticizing their own position. But they're doing a disservice to whatever their position is that they think that they're defending. They're basically saying that people who are on my side of the equation are cranks because I'm acting like a crank. So just don't do that. You know what I mean? It's like, well, probably the people who are all pushing back against the consensus of global warming are doing this because they don't have anything factual to say.
Yeah.
If they had any good arguments, they would be giving me the good arguments. They wouldn't be resorting to name calling or straw men or logical fallacies. It's not a coincidence that their arguments are terrible because their position is terrible. Their position is wrong. And they're just proving that. So when you do that, when you do email somebody or whatever, and you're just doing logical fallacies and personal attacks and, and straw men and whatever, you're just proving that your side is weak, that you don't have a good argument to make. Because if you did, you would make it, right? It would be factual. It would be logical.
I mean, that's so typical. I mean, getting personally attacked when you're trying to have a conversation with someone, to me, 99% of the time, they don't truly even understand what their position is, or how to argue for their position, or show evidence for their position. Personal attacks come out because they're easy, and I also notice. I don't know about you, Steve, and what you're, with the types of emails that you're responding to, but I just noticed that people in general don't want to do the freaking research.
Yeah,
they don't want to put the time in. And I was talking to someone
That's
about
hard. It's work.
Someone's was trying to be how people will go, oh, I'm sorry, your little brain can't comprehend you. I get that comment. Okay, then what's going on? So the person finally asked, well, what are you researching? What the hell? And I'm like, so I explained the research process, in a brief way. I'm like, well, you write down all the points that are being made, and then you look each one of them up, and you try to find the origin of that point. Where did that point first come out?
Yeah.
Then you can also, if it's a factual point, if it's based off of math or statistics, then look at the statistics that are being quoted,
the numbers,
and then look at statistics from other organizations. So I give this
101 sort of
right.
how to investigate
And the
claim.
response was, I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
Ain't nobody got time for that. You know what I mean? It's like, well, that's what you got to do.
Shut up.
But that's what you have to do. And it sucks. It's usually not fun.
I find it fun.
Yeah, but
I
for
like
most
doing
people,
a deep dive and researching.
Yeah, it is. There is something.
It's fascinating. Yeah, but if you're a scientist, that's what we do, right? It's how do we know what we know? There's a question. What's the answer? And I want to know the objective answer, whatever the question is. So, when the whole Haitians in Springfield eating dogs and cats thing came out, my first instinct was, I have to find out if that's objectively true or not. The most objective information I could find about what the truth actually is. And it may not be binary. It may not be that they're doing it a lot, or no, they're never doing it ever. There could be some nuance in there as well. But before I would talk about it publicly, I want to have my ducks in a row factually, right? Or my geese, I guess I should say.
Waka waka, got him.
No.
Hold on, wait, I got the perfect thing.
The dogs, they're eating the dogs.
There you go, applause.
Thank you. So in any case, the thing, and again, the fact is there is no evidence that this is happening to any degree in Springfield. And to put it into context, which is another thing you could do. So one thing is there's the factual claim, but then I also all right, where's this coming from? The whole reference thing.
Right.
You track it back to its beginning. But the Haitian community in particular has been the target of accusations of cannibalism, of eating pets, of voodoo, of this sort of stuff for literally hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And it is pretty much entirely racist. It's racism and xenophobia. That's what it is. And they've been dealing with this as a way of basically dehumanizing and othering them for a couple of 100 years. This is not new. This didn't come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Right. This is not like context free.
Steve, I tell people, I don't care what the truth. I want to know what the truth is, but I don't have any.
We're pro-truth. We're not pro one side.
Yeah,
or the other.
I'm like, if people were actually doing it and there was proof, fine, it's happening. You know what I mean? Like, but when there is an absence of evidence, when the only evidence that
it's not
exists,
the claim is, first of all, you're making the claim. You've got to defend. I don't have to prove that it's never happened. You have to prove that you give me evidence that it's happening. Right, that if you're making the claim, you have to provide the evidence, but they don't have the evidence. And the local authorities who have investigated it said this is not happening. So it's not an absence of looking for it, And so then they would say, well, I hear people on the internet claiming that it happened. So it's like, I'm going to reference anecdotal, like the lowest kind of evidence possible. And I mean, really, there are people saying things on the internet that are not true. I'm aghast. I'm shocked.
It's just frustrating when, the assumption is that when they hear it, that it's correct. That's what the people that are engaged
if it fits your political ideology, it's correct. If it doesn't fit your political ideology, then it's wrong. As opposed to, let's check the facts and see, regardless, because again, like if it were true, okay, then it's true. Those are facts, and we would put it into context and whatever, but we'd say yes, but it actually happened or whatnot. But as far as I could tell, it hasn't actually happened.
Look, and Bob's in Florence. You're in Florence. You're in the city
Bob.
that I belong in, and he's taunting me, saying he's having amazing Italian food.
This
right
is
now.
Bob.
Oh, damn it.
I mean, Bob, what the hell? Like, why would you even
Bob,
do that?
what's the most recent
This is
dish
Bob.
you had in
Christ.
Italy? Come on, you got to tell us.
Yeah, meatballs.
Just give us details. Send pictures. What are you doing?
Have you
Yeah.
had cacio e pepe yet?
Yeah, not pictures of you, pictures of the food.
Cacio e pepe. Florence, though, you got to have the ragu.
Is
You
that
got to
right?
get the meat. The meat is the
meat.
Oh yeah, the
in Florence.
Bob, have a steak while you're there, because the steaks there are amazing.
Yes.
And Bob, can you confirm, which I have already confirmed, I already know the answer to this, but did you try any of the local bread in Florence, and is it not flavorless?
Oh, because it's salt free.
Yeah,
Salt-free.
they make a low salt bread.
They do that because it's meant for dipping.
Yeah, you don't just eat it.
Oh.
You have to dip it in something.
Yeah,
I thought it was like some salt lobby
No.
or whatever, the salt
No, it's just-
mafia.
I mean, we looked into this at the time. Like, was this like a deliberate culinary choice, or was
Right.
this a reaction to like
Right.
not having salt, and then they
Economics.
made
Yeah,
the best of it?
exactly.
And the answer is unclear.
Yeah.
But
It goes back too far.
It goes back too
Sure.
far. But like you don't have that kind of Florentine bread just straight up.
No, you don't.
You have to. It's meant they put the whole thing in soup or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's meant to be part of something else. Whereas like bread you get in Rome is delish, straight up
Just straight
with
up.
nothing else. You can just eat it.
Or Arthur Avenue.
Yeah, Rome or Arthur Avenue.
Steve, did you
Which
know
one?
that Florence is my favorite place on earth?
Is it really?
It is my favorite city and my
It's a
favorite
gorgeous
place on
city.
earth. I think I should actually live there.
Yeah.
I really do. I think about it all.
How
the
does it
time.
compare in your mind to Edinburgh?
Edinburgh.
All right. Well,
Because Edinburgh is a gorgeous city too.
it is an amazing city.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. I really loved it. But my soul does not sing when I'm there.
Yeah, I hear you.
But when I'm in Florence, I just feel like I'm in the right place. And I
Genetically speaking.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I just, you can't deny that it's absolutely gorgeous. The building, the architecture is gorgeous. The landscape,
countryside.
the countryside. What's prettier than that? Switzerland. I get it. Look at Olivia. I don't want to hear it from you. I know it's beautiful there, and I know you've invited us. But man,
And the chocolate.
the chocolate.
the Tuscany countryside, my God, it's like to
It's
me, it's
amazing.
like it's what heaven
I mean,
looks
there
like.
are lots of beautiful places around the world. Obviously.
Of course there is.
Clearly.
You know,
But that's one's my
that's
favorite.
that's the one we've been to most recently. that's
probably
that's
too.
a
But my
pic-
friends are
picturesque
like, my
beautiful
friends
place.
go, let's go to next year. Let's go to Sicily. I'm like, we'll go to Sicily. Sure. I mean, I'd like to go. I mean, why don't we go to Florence though? Why would we? Why would we? Why
Mess it up.
bother?
Mess
You
up
know?
a good thing.
I don't know how to talk them into it. I have to kind of be good. I can't be like every year say I only want to go to Florence, but that's where I want to go. All right. So a couple things. People ask questions. Somebody asked how many emails we get. We get hundreds
yeah.
of emails. We get
Tons.
we get more than we can reach,
And
more than we can
on certain
respond to.
weeks.
I read them all. I do read every email.
Yes, that's true.
We
I can't respond to all of them.
somebody suggested
Some of
that
them are
we
not
do
worth responding.
election night live stream. And I would do that. I would do that only if we can go all in.
What do you mean?
Food wise,
Say anything we
Meatballs?
want. I want to be able
Oh.
to say whatever I want about the
So
candidates,
you're making
about what's happening.
a really
have
good
a
argument for why we
throwaway-
should
yeah,
not
exactly.
I know,
do
but
it.
that's but there's no. I don't want to sit there and be throttled all the way down.
We
to,
could put.
Oh yeah, this is really complicated.
Let's put Jay in
Just a-
another room and we can mute him as we need
Why
to.
can't we say? I
Big
mean, if
mute
we
button.
don't speak out against the crazy that's going on, then what the freak, man?
You really want to have this conversation?
No, I
No,
don't.
that's
Forget
not.
it. Olivia, I want to ask you a question. How many people can you fit in your house?
Yes. Okay.
All right, so Bob completely blew us off.
No, he just.
Is he
popped
ghosting
in.
us now?
He
Just
yeah, he literally
snipes
just
in?
sniped.
Like having fun in Florence.
Ah,
Yeah,
you suck. You're in the studio, and I know it smells in there, and I'm in Florence.
Doesn't smell in here.
No, I'm just saying.
What's Bob's favorite color? You think
Red.
red?
I'm 100% sure.
You're 100%
Mm-hmm.
sure. Okay. Well, did you know that apparently people's?
Oh, I was going to do this one too, but we could just chat about
Okay,
it.
I think I figured we could just chat about it because it's weird.
Did you know
here
that
we
you
go.
can tell if someone's a good person based on their favorite color? Wait, what? So research has found that people's favorite color tells a lot about their personality and the psychology of their brain. Oh boy, everyone's just gonna start exposing all their friends and family. So if someone's favorite color is blue, scientists found that they are very loyal friends. They put other
at
people's
that
needs
broccoli,
before their
man.
own, and overall are very good people. If someone's favorite color is green, they are very hardworking and smart, but have a hard time trusting people, and can tend to be a very jealous person. Well, I don't got any green on. I guess it's a good thing. So if your favorite color is pink, they are very loving and compassionate people, and are very dependable. If someone's favorite color is red, they're natural born leaders and like to be the center of attention. But people
Oh, Bob, right?
That is not Bob.
That's not Bob.
All right, Jay,
He's
what do you
not a
think
Power
about
Ranger? Just from there. Yeah. What's your
I think
favorite?
It's all subjective nonsense. There is no. First of all, how could having a favorite color influence your entire personality? It's like a horoscope. It's complete, absolute bullshit. You can line up 1,000 people that like the color red, and you'll see the whole spectrum of different types of mentality there.
All right, but let's take a more nuanced question.
Okay.
Right? If you took 1,000 people and did a standard personality inventory, right, and scored them in terms of like the 5 established personality traits: agreeableness,
Yeah.
openness to new experiences, introversion, extroversion, neuroticism,
Yeah.
and the 5th one I'm forgetting. And if you did that,
Yes.
and then you also asked them what their favorite color was,
Yeah.
and you did a statistical analysis. Do you think there would be any correlation between color preferences and any of the personality traits?
I mean, I feel kind of set up here, Steve,
Yeah,
and I'm going to
seems
take
like
that
he
as
wants you.
disrespect. No, I mean, I would say no. I would say if you ask enough people, it would average out. That seems likely.
I think
So, would you-
societally it influences.
All right.
you
So
in a
there's
way.
also another question that's related to this. If you ask those same people what they think the emotional tone of red is or blue is,
Yeah.
not what their favorite color is, but what do they think those colors mean
Sure.
culturally, emotionally?
Yes, there would be a more more agreeable response. People would tend to think that red might be a more violent war.
Yeah.
Blood. Blah blah blah. Green is nature, natural. Blue is serene. Orange is you're the best person in the world. Yeah, sure. Those are all cultural.
Yeah,
things.
those right. So if you
but there's
think,
an impact. You think that we are culturally impacted by what the culture says the color is, and we pick the color to match our personality. Is that what you think?
well, that's one hypothesis.
Okay.
Maybe you pick the color that you think represents what you think your personality is, which isn't always necessarily what it actually is
Yes.
if you score it objectively on
Okay.
a test. So the answer is, are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
It's
It's
complicated.
complicated.
So the answer is
Put that on a T-shirt.
there are studies which show that some correlation between
Yeah.
what people claim to be their favorite color, what they think colors mean, and their personality scoring. And there are others that do not show any correlation.
There you have it.
And then when you look at it all sort of in a review, there's no consistency.
There you go.
Which tends to mean that your first answer was close to the truth. There's always a lot more nuance to it, but the bottom line is right now there is no evidence to correlate your favorite color with any specific personality trait or
Okay.
cluster. or cluster of traits.
All
right?
you had to say was you were right, Jay, and now we could have
Yeah.
moved on. Okay.
But it's more complicated than that. But some studies do show that. The other sub question then, because some of these studies have been done in other countries, is this cross-cultural or
Yes.
not? If you do the study in Korea or in Israel or the United States, do you get the same answer? And we don't know because with the studies that have been done, they're kind of all over the place. But when you look at it's a great example of how we know things in science, right? When you ask the question, it gets really complicated, and you think no single study. A scientist now say based on a single study, that's bullshit. That's not the way it works. There are so many sub questions you have to ask. Plus, even if a study did a statistical analysis and showed, and again, like the studies that I looked at where it did show it, it wasn't so simple as if your color is red, this is your personality. It was that there was statistical correlations between like light blue and like 3 or 4 different personality traits. You know what I mean?
Boy.
It wasn't a one-to-one correlation. But the real question then is, does it replicate? And not only does it replicate that there's any statistical correlation, do the same statistical correlations show up over and over again when you study it in different populations, et cetera? And that's where the answer is no. There hasn't been any clear signal that emerges from all of this research. It just appears to be all noise. The only thing that's really consistent is what people believe the colors represent. And that might influence their answers, but it may not either. It doesn't necessarily affect what they think of as their favorite color,
Okay.
right? Which may just have absolutely nothing to do with their personality.
What's your favorite color?
It's always been green.
Yeah, I knew that.
Yeah.
Okay. Ian, what does
But
does
you
this
wear
guy,
a lot of blue.
That's because there's a green screen behind me.
That's true.
I can't wear green.
Ian,
Okay,
what
that's fair.
does the guy say about the color orange? I'm curious.
Okay, let's see. We'll move on.
But people tend to respect them a lot more than the average person. If someone's favorite color is purple, they like to help people and are very creative. But sadly, can sometimes be very difficult to deal with. Dude, I'm gonna go ask all my friends what their favorite color is now. Do you know the rarest month to be born in?
No.
As we all know,
Doesn't
everyone
Doesn't
is
even do
unique.
it.
But
It just goes, yeah.
I think the orange was respected. Was that it?
I don't know.
But the thing is, it's also like
that
those kind of vague. He's not even giving personality profiles. He's just making vague personality statements. This is like the back of the magazine kind of test that you would do.
Yeah.
Those are worthless because anybody could see any of those traits in themselves.
Of course.
You know.
They like to help people. It's like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about?
Yeah. It's worthless. That kind of stuff is nonsense.
So
That is horoscope level bullshit.
Someone on here, Malavander said, as an artist, I've never understood the concept of favorite color. Every color changes appearance and vibe depending on what other colors are adjacent to it. That's interesting. I mean, I
agree with that.
I agree with it. The theory of that, absolutely.
And there are definitely different contexts in which I'd like different colors. And I wouldn't necessarily choose one color for everything in my life.
Of course
you know what I
not.
mean? But it usually, what this comes down to is like when you were a kid and you had to pick the color of your piece in a game of Sorry or whatever, which color did you go for?
Yeah.
Right? That's what I would always go
the
for
color,
green.
But for me, I like the color orange.
I don't wear a lot of green though.
And I happen to like lots of things that come up with that color. Like I
Yes.
like oranges. I like orange starburst out of all the color.
You like pumpkins?
I love pumpkins. I
I love
sun-
orange food too, but that's
Yeah.
why I like the orange flavor.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think that's a part of it. you
Like
know.
I would choose orange jelly beans over green jelly beans
Always.
any day.
Always.
Always.
There's a lot of good orange food, not a lot of good blue food.
Yeah.
Not a lot of
Right.
good blue food.
Yeah,
And you could argue the tomato sauce is orange. It's red. It's in the family.
put a little
You know what I'm
cream in it.
saying?
Or pink. Put a little cream in there. make
So
it
I'm
pink.
not surprised now that I kind of talk it out loud that it's
Yeah.
all based on food. I mean, I guess I am very food
Well,
oriented.
do you wear a lot of orange though? How
no,
does that?
no, I don't wear orange
See, that's
at
like
all.
an interesting.
Yeah, again, the context is
I wear black T-shirts
A lot.
every day.
Yeah, I've seen
I
you
wear
mostly
black because I don't have to think about it. I
now
don't-
if you
'Cause
could
he's
have
emo.
if you
He's
could have a
straight
car
edge.
that's any color, like what would be your
Oh.
preferred color for your car that you drive
That's
around in?
I mean, I
Good
wouldn't
question.
pick black because black shows scratches too
And
much.
it's too common.
And I wouldn't pick white because
Same
it's
thing. I hate
Dirty.
right.
white.
It's too, so I always
Whoops.
pick like the dark gray or the dark brown gray. You know, to me that's a
But
nice
if you,
neutral
but
color.
that's
Sports
partly
car, let's go.
constrained by what colors are being offered to you when you're buying a car, what's available, and also they will charge more money for
the
some
better.
colors over others. But if that was all not a factor,
Yeah.
money was not a factor, and
Yep.
you could literally choose any Pantone of color that you want for your car. What would you choose?
It kind of depends on the vehicle, but I mean, I really do like a dark orange.
Yeah.
You know, like
Dark
a chimney orange, or like a like
Yeah.
a
Goth,
sunset
You're right.
sunset orange. I
Or
mean,
yellow orange.
Yeah, how about
Yeah,
a
yellow
canary
orange.
yellow? That like
Not canary.
not
yellow.
you don't like canary yellow?
Yeah. So.
oh, you know what I like?
What?
Oh man, you ever see a chromed car?
Yeah.
Holy Christ, that's what I pick. Not
I like-
silver, a chromed car.
Do you like the metallic colors?
Yes, I like the metallic colors.
Yeah. So I was just watching Star Wars Andor,
Mm-hmm.
which, by the way, is the best Star Wars series of
Yes.
all the
Yeah, it's
series.
fantastic.
Yeah, and the
AQ6,
senator was
welcome.
driving around in this chromed, like dark blue flying car. It was
Yeah.
gorgeous.
Yeah.
I was like, that's a really pretty color. for
I've
a car.
seen most colors represented very well with very expensive sports cars or cool,
Yeah,
you know.
metallic like emerald green, also
Yeah.
very
A
pretty.
very, very dark blue.
Mhm.
I see this on BMWs a lot, and they look sharp as hell, man.
Do you like the shiny or the matte finish?
I've
do you
seen
not
a
like the
black
matte
matte finish,
Yeah.
and it looks really rugged. That's really cool. I mean, I would like a truck in like that black
Mhm.
matte.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
All right, so moving on.
Anyway.
So what we've realized is that color means nothing.
Right.
That it's important to relate your favorite
But
color to
also
food
everything.
that you like to eat.
Sure.
So I would imagine if you were a breatharian that you would pick blue,
Mhm.
right? Does that make sense? What do you call a person that loves water? Like drinkarian?
Water.
Oh, like just to live on water.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hydroarian.
Hydrarian.
Hydrarian.
Sounds like you're a librarian in the ocean.
Hey, so I'd like while we're talking over here. So all right, so here's an update on Nauticon.
Nauticon.
So it turns out, I
Is
think
Nauticon not a happening?
I've mentioned this in different venues.
Wait.
I think I talked about it on this last show.
Yeah.
I priced out quite a lot of hotels in DC, and they're super expensive. And in order to do it, we'd have to charge a lot more for the ticket. The hotel room per night would be
The whole thing would be way expensive.
it would be expensive for us.
Yeah,
It would be
annoying.
expensive for you guys, especially for you guys, because we'd have to charge more to make the ticketing work, and then you guys would have to pay more for the hotels. So what we decided was to go back to White Plains this year because it's a known entity. Number one, number two, we got I already know all the answers to all the questions. I already did it. So I don't want to say it's going to be easier, but it will be easier for me to do it. There'll just be other work I'll end up doing because move into more content and stuff like that. We do want to move it around though, and I will do a deep dive on some other cities that are in 6-hour driving distance for us. And unfortunately, we really can't fly for this because I would need to be there. It's complicated, but for example, if we were to do it in Las Vegas as an example, I would have to go there several times, and I'd have to be out there like a week in advance. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't. It's too expensive. It doesn't work.
All right. Responding to Silac, he said gunmetal or brushed aluminum is the
Yeah.
way to go. For certain kinds of technology, I'm not sure I want to drive a car that's brushed aluminum, but for certain technology, I agree. However,
Yeah.
I would throw into that mix antiqued nickel.
Yeah,
Have you
sure.
ever seen antique
Yeah,
nickel?
I have.
As in terms of like the metallic kind of colors.
Mhm.
And I'm also just partial to bronze. But
Yeah,
it has to be
bronze.
like a dark, like an aged bronze. Looks really, really
I
nice.
wouldn't want my car to be.
No,
to be
not my
bronze.
car, but I'm just for some technology things. Like belt
this-
buckle.
Wait, like this
Or-
color kind of
Let's
stuff.
see.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
furniture. Yeah, like for
Yeah, yeah.
doorknobs and stuff, we have a lot
That's
of
good.
hardware that's antique to nickel.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like it.
I don't like that brass doorknob
Not
color.
brass,
I don't like that.
but like a
Yeah.
dull bronze.
Yeah, it's
can be
basically
good.
like you took a trumpet and you turned it into a doorknob. Like,
That's what it
I don't
is.
like it.
Yeah, old trumpets.
Wait, Olivia was saying that
oh.
there was flooding where she lives, and people have been saying in the chat that there seems to be an uptick in flooding in general.
Mhm.
And my response to that is
Let's talk about it.
let's talk about it. So I recently,
Well, we're going to talk about it for our YouTube video.
you want to do that right now?
Yeah. Why-
Okay, here we go.
Might as
We're
well.
going
And
to
here
talk
we go.
about it.
Like the-
Change the background.
Like hear about it and hit it go. Remember that?
Let me hit it go.
That character's name was Fatback.
Fatback.
Fatback. All right, guys, we are going to do our YouTube video.
Brush
the
nickel, yeah.
YouTube. we're going to talk about flooding, and I'm going to begin. Are you guys ready? Is everybody, strapped in?
Hold on. Stand by.
I like patina bronze too.
Nice patina. That's a good word. Oil rubbed.
But before we start, while you're preparing, Ian,
Okay.
yeah, Olivia, I didn't really get an eyeful of the details that you dealt with, but the flooding in general has been bad. It's extreme weather, and I'm going to ask Steve questions like, is it caused by global warming, or is it just a weird phenomenon? My town got smacked incredibly hard. We had the worst flood, they said, in 5,000 years. It was like a 5,000-year flood. It was unbelievable what happened in my town.
Hey, 1 second.
All right.
Before you do, I have to look up one term.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I make sure I'm not confusing fluvial and pluvial.
Fluvial and pluvial.
Yes.
2 words I don't know. But anyway, yeah, my lots of bad things happened in my town. People lost their lives, tons of property damage, unbelievable damage to the roads. We're still digging out. Roads are still shut. Kids going to school, like the buses.
Look at this one, Jay.
Yeah, where was that?
Oh, TikTok just died. Whoops. Oxford, Connecticut.
Oh, that's all right. That was in my town. Oh, I know that one. I've seen this.
Ay. Sorry, TikTok. Computer just crashed.
Okay.
So they did something interesting. This is something I won't mention when we do the actual item, but they did something interesting. So I live in a town that has a dam, and there is a lake called Lake Zor, and it's a man-made lake, right?
Yeah.
They do this for energy, and I guess they do it also just to control
The control of water.
All right, so
Yeah.
what the engineers realized when the rain started to hit and hit really hard, they said we need to drain the lake now, because of how much water is going to come into the
that
lake, that they wouldn't be able to get the water out fast enough, and I'm sure that they were worried that it could have destroyed the dam, which would have been unbelievably bad if that happened. That would have just been profoundly bad. So they drained the lake before the rain got out of control. And the rain was still so bad that the road that runs along the area where the water drains out of the lake, like you say, you have a dam, right? The water goes down, and then there's like basically like a river there, and that river, the road that ran across that road is gone, by the way.
Yeah.
That's how bad the water was. They probably won't have that fixed for a year. All right, so you guys ready for this?
Hold on. Let me get this back up and running. The TikTok computer crashed.
I've seen it rain sideways, Keith, and it is weird when you
Gotta
see
figure out
the
what
wind
that's
is so
about.
bad that the water is literally going horizontal. That is crazy, man. I don't remember where I saw that, though. And then Olivia says that there was a flood of the millennium in 1997, and 30 years later they had a worse flood. She wants us to talk about how these rare events are now so frequent. All right, we'll get into the details.
We'll get into the details in just one moment, please. Holding, please. So does this computer hold themselves back up?
So no to the election night live stream. No one do
We
it.
could talk about it, but we can't just go off the rails.
All right. We'll just do the... Oh, never mind.
Oh,
Give me
Harvey.
2 minutes, and I'll be back up. on
Steve, did
this
anything
one.
happen to your house with 60 inches of rain? Yeah, we see flooding in France. We see flooding in Venice. I saw a video. It was like really disturbing. The center square in Venice, it was flooded, and people were walking around in the flood like it was nothing. You know what I mean? Like serving food and everything like this. It
Mhm.
just becomes so common
yeah.
that it's
With the big boots on, the
Yeah.
big galoshes. Continue live. Let's go back live on TikTok. Sorry, TikTok.
okay.
Computer exploded. All right.
And
And we
ready?
are rolling, and let me switch this to that, and there you go. And okay, I'll shut up.
Good? All right, here we go. Steve, what is up with all the flooding? Apparently, I live in a town called Oxford. You can look it up in the news. Oxford got hit with like phenomenally bad flooding a few weeks ago, a month ago.
It was at the epicenter of the flooding.
It really
Yeah.
was. It was unbelievable what we were seeing people post pictures on Facebook. But now as we talk about it, and as we're reading the news and we're talking to people that listen to the show, apparently flooding has been happening a lot globally.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd like you to explain why this is happening, and you have 15 seconds. Go.
Well, first, we always like to ask the question, is it actually increasing, or is this just an artifact of reporting, or just people noticing it more, or whatever? And so, we have to turn to, organizations like NOAA or whatever who are going to gather statistics in an objective way and answer the question. And there's different ways you can answer that question, right? You could say, like, just how many flooding events happen, how bad are those flooding events, and how much damage do they cause? So if you just look at, like, how much property damage is being done, that's pretty dramatically been increasing over the last 50 years.
That's right.
But that could be the case even if flooding itself were not increasing, because if we are building more property in floodplains, which we are,
Yeah, we are.
there's going to be more damage even with the same flooding. Not only, and we're continuing to build more property in floodplains, in going into the future. So that's a pretty serious problem.
We shouldn't do that.
So there's a lot more property. It's a very complicated question, but there's a lot more property at risk. All right, so if you look at just flooding events and severity of flooding, those also have been getting worse over the last 50 years, if you just look at the objective data. And then the question is why, and there's a few answers to that. Now, the part of the problem in answering that question is if you ask, like, is global warming increasing flooding? First we can't talk about an individual flooding event, right? We have to distinguish that from just flooding statistically in general. So, like, did global warming cause the flooding that you saw recently in Oxford? You can't say. It was an individual event. We never say, like, global warming caused this heat wave or that hurricane. It's just that statistically speaking, things are moving in a certain direction. So global warming does appear to be contributing to flooding, and here's the reasons why that is the case. So one thing that global warming causes is raising sea levels, right? Rising sea levels. And it does that in two ways. You know what those two ways are?
Melting ice.
Melting ice,
and pressure changes.
Temperature changes.
Yeah.
The water expands as it heats.
Right.
So the water is going to expand.
Okay.
But also melting glaciers find its way to the ocean. Melting sea ice does not contribute to sea level rise because the sea
ice is already in the water.
It's already in the water. It's already
it's water that
displacing.
it's on land or on the shelf. Yeah.
Right. And of course, when you melt ice, it displaces exactly the same amount of space, right, as the ice was displacing. The water fits into the displacement of the ice. So anyway, yes, the sea levels rise. So that contributes to flooding. Mainly because, what we call, oceanic flooding, right? Because, for obvious reasons, the water's higher to begin with. As you're going to get high tides, and that could overwhelm, efforts to keep the water at bay. When you do get storm surges or waves, again, there's more water there. It's already higher. It's going to go farther inland. You're going to get more volume of water breaking over those levees or dams.
How about the increase in hurricanes, though?
So the other way one is sea level rise. The other way that global warming contributes to flooding is because the warmer air has more moisture in it. And there's more moisture in the air, you're going to get more rain.
And it has more energy as well.
Yes, but that maybe relate to the direct damage from the hurricane. But if you're just talking about the amount of water that's dropping, that's related to how much water is in the air, which is increased with higher temperatures. So those are the two main reasons that global warming contributes to flooding: more rain, higher seas, which are going to cause more oceanic flooding. In terms of the flooding caused by rain itself, there's two types, just to give the terminology. There's pluvial flooding and fluvial flooding. Fluvial is when rivers and lakes overrun their banks.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
And pluvial is when just drainage systems are inadequate to deal with the volume of rain. So it's not connected to any specific body of existing water. It's just the drainage systems are overwhelmed. And how does that happen? So there's a couple ways that happens. So increasing rain obviously is one, and this is another way in which factors other than global warming are contributing to the amount of flooding and the damage that gets done. Actually, when local communities build dams and levees to hold back flooding, they could actually make flooding worse.
Why?
And this has been modeled now and it's been studied, and it shows that, it could kind of make flooding worse. Well, think about it. The water's got to go somewhere, right? And if you're like, we're going to dam off this valley here so the water doesn't flood into our community, where does that water go? It goes farther inland. It goes farther downstream or wherever, depending on what the floodplain is. And to communities which may be not as prepared for flooding. And you may be maybe 50 miles away from the coast and not realize that you're still in the floodplain of coastal flooding, because now that we've erected those dams, that water is going to just keep going inland. So you have to give water someplace to go. And so we need to really think about these models and think about this carefully so that we basically plan on where the water is going to go and where it's going to flood, especially now that that there's increasing water that's going to be falling with storms, et cetera. Another thing that inhibits dealing with floods when they occur is the fact that we're building a lot of concrete. Remember, this was very, this was a huge factor with the hurricane that hit Houston a number of years ago, where there's a lot of flooding. And part of that was because there is so much asphalt and concrete, the water doesn't have as many places to seep into the ground.
Yeah, that's a big problem.
So it just flows over those areas. And again, so it goes farther and wider and is there longer and drains more slowly, and therefore it gets backed up more and you get more flooding.
Did you ever see the concrete and blacktop that they create that water goes right through?
Yeah, that would be good.
I wonder, but you don't see it everywhere. And I wonder if it probably doesn't last as long, it's super expensive, whatever.
Yeah, I got to look at all those details. So there's more flooding because of global warming. The flooding might be worse because of just our infrastructure that we're building. We may be actually be doing things that are counterproductive if we don't plan our levees and dams well enough to basically account for where the water is going to go. We may have to make sure that we're preserving places for flooding, floodplains for water to get absorbed back into the earth and for rivers to carry it down to lakes and oceans. And the other big issue is, we're increasingly building within floodplains.
Why?
Well, we're doing that because in some locations, some communities, there's housing shortages. The land itself may be people want to live along the coast. It's when you're not getting flooded, it's a great place to build and to live.
But it's like living, in Tornado Alley.
Which people do. People live in earthquake zones. They live in hurricane zones, tornado zones, and floodplains. So
this might sound insensitive, because I don't understand the economic impact. Maybe it's less expensive to live there and people don't have a choice. But I don't know. I would just be terrified of living in that area and just move 50 miles to the north or go.
Right. So what do we? So and you can't just tell you town you got to move. You can't just go in there and do that.
Of course not.
But what could we do? So I think
could we drop a nuke and stop the flooding?
No,
that wouldn't work. Okay.
But so again, with better land management, we could reduce the impacts of flooding, but also we may need to think very carefully about ordinances and building codes. Maybe we need to raise the level of buildings so that they can withstand higher and higher flooding.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This came up when New Orleans flooded, and of course, there's also the economic issue. All the poor people are living in the low-lying areas of the city, and maybe we just need to raise up all the buildings.
Yeah, that would be expensive.
10 feet. But is it less expensive than the flooding damage that happens? That's the thing.
I don't know.
Yes, these mitigating factors are always expensive, but you have to compare them to the cost and the displacement and the lives lost and everything. Of the damage of the flood itself. It's probably cheaper in the long run to just build in resilience to the infrastructure. And also we might need to just incentivize people to not build in floodplains or to build elsewhere, and when it designate floodplains that are not developed now, you can't develop in these new places. Let's not expand into more floodplains. We'll deal with the places where we already have developed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But let's not. But unfortunately, we're not doing that. We are expanding into more floodplains, so we need to deal with that as well. So there are definitely things that we can do to mitigate this. And we're going to have to. This is part of climate change mitigation,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's happening. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Even in the best case scenario in terms of like transitioning to, green economy, et cetera, we're going, over the next 100 years, it's going to get worse. And then maybe by the end of the century, we'll start to turn things down. So we have to deal with a century of rising sea levels and worse flooding and, worse storm surges and growing population and, et cetera. And we need a plan to deal with this.
There's going to be, excuse me, start again, Ian. There's going to be people that are basically like flood refugees.
Yeah, there already are. I mean, yeah. That's another thing. Like when there is a major flooding event, do we rebuild in the same location?
Yeah.
Maybe that's an opportunity of, maybe we should rebuild somewhere else. And
Yeah, but a historic site like New Orleans, like,
New Orleans is special.
Yeah.
You can't, that's not like typical.
But what about New York City? I mean, New York City is like not that far above, the ocean
We
line.
build a lot of our cities on the coastline.
Yeah.
Because that's access to shipping, et
Yeah, I
cetera.
get it, but man, it's going to be scary. I saw, what was that? I forget that show we were watching. Anyway, they put a concrete wall around Manhattan. Remember? You remember that show? I forget what it was. And
Escape from New York?
No. It was a recent one.
Another one?
It was a
Okay.
sci-fi show that we were watching. But bottom line is, like, there's going to be extreme mitigation that are going to happen.
Are you going to put a wall around all of Florida?
Florida's gone. You ever see you ever see the projections of what's going to happen?
Florida
in
is like mostly floodplain.
Disney is probably freaking out at this point. Like they're one bad rainstorm away from losing $1 trillion investment. It's crazy, man.
Yeah. So this is a very real effect of global warming. It's even without it, it's already an issue. Just the fact that we're expanding where we're developing in more floodplains, and our mitigating efforts are complicated and maybe counterproductive. Like all that's an issue. It's just getting worse because of global warming. But we know of ways to deal with it. We just have to do it, but it requires political will,
and money, and we
money
have to.
And the will to do it.
I think, it's easy to say this, it's hard to make it happen, but we need better senses of community around the world to help each other. Like I saw my town really, stand up for each other.
Yeah.
Like restaurants were telling people, come eat for free. Supermarkets were giving away free food. People were out there with their pickup trucks, and, we got to help each other. But it's still, even if you lived in a very strong community with that kind of help, if enough damage happens and enough loss is there, we need the state and government to get involved.
Yeah.
Significantly. And the idea here is get involved now. Start thinking about mitigation now. Spend money making it so if there is a bad flood that your town could handle the influx of water. In my town, what happens, Steve, is typically you have these brooks, and they go under the road, and they just put piping in, and they build like a kind of a mini bridge, and they put guardrails up. But they engineered those to handle 1/100th of the water that we got. And as soon as that gets turned up, like roads get washed away.
Yeah.
So we're going to have civil engineers now
build in more resilience.
Yes, we have to build in a lot more resilience. You have to future-proof things.
So there's a lot of talk. Is one final issue we can get into. So that was a 1,000-year flood you had in Oxford.
Yeah.
What does that mean? It means there's a 1 in 1,000 chance on any given year of a flood of that level happening. Does that mean that it's like unusual to have a 1 in 1,000-year flood? It's like, well, yes and no. Because that's there was a 1 in 1,000 chance of like you being flooded there.
Yeah.
But of course, there's places all over the world.
Yes, it could be happening everywhere.
It's some place somewhere is going to have a 1 in 100 year, 1 in 500 year, 1 in 1,000 year flood. So you have to look at them statistically over time, but it takes a long time to gather enough statistics to say like what's happening. The other thing is that the 1 in 1,000 year flood or whatever is a moving target, and they change those based upon what's actually happening.
Yeah, like that's a number it's a statistic.
It's just it may be but it may be an outdated number.
Yeah.
But they'll update the numbers based upon new events as they occur. But again, the evidence we have so far is that yes, flooding is increasing, and it is partly due to global warming, but it's also partly due to other infrastructure building factors. And the projections are it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
And it's not only that, like, so we've recently experienced multiple rare weather events just in our little part of Connecticut,
Yeah.
right? So a few years ago, we had the worst tornado that we've had in 100
Yeah.
years,
Yep.
hit the state. And, we've had, not long before that, like the worst hurricane that's hit in quite a while.
You're
you know?
right.
And
That's
now
crazy.
we got the
That's
worst flooding
crazy.
that's
Yeah,
happened in quite a while.
it's happening.
Yeah, it certainly seems like this is a change from like our childhood where we were dealing with the worst snowstorms that have happened in a long time.
And
that's not happening
As
as
kids,
much.
those were great.
Yeah,
We
right.
loved those.
But you do have to look at statistics. So the same question comes up with like forest fires. Are they actually increasing, or is it just the fact that we have more things causing forest fires? And is it our forest management? It's like, yeah, it's all of those things.
Yeah, but
it's also global
yeah.
warming. Yeah, it's also thrown into the mix.
And on the personal level, do an assessment of the property that you own. You know,
Yeah.
if you own a home, even if you're renting, like talk to your landlord. Like what can we do to make things better? I know it's very expensive, but you could do what we did down in the studio here, where they make it so if water does come through the concrete, it basically hits a tarp, goes down, and gets absorbed into the ground underneath the house. That type of mitigation is very expensive, but it might be the norm going forward. Maybe more
Right.
basements need that type.
Yeah. Prevention, though, is as expensive as it is. It's usually less expensive than dealing with the damage at the other end. But I've always lived on top of hills. I feel comfortable living on top of hills.
Yeah, me too.
We don't have to worry about flooding at the altitude where I am.
But because I live on a hill, the tornado hit me worse, and I lost 7 trees in my yard.
Yeah,
and that was crazy.
The tornado, being on a hill is not protection from that. But even if you live on a hill,
say it again.
But even if you live on top of a hill,
Say it again. Change camera.
But even if you live on top of a hill, you still are in the community. You still have to drive to work and go shopping and everything like that. So, like we were unsure if we were going to be able to get you home when we were getting back to Connecticut from Chicago on the day of the flood.
It was
'Cause,
legit.
there was like one road left in Oxford that could get you
There was
home.
one way in and out.
Yeah.
Imagine if that,
If that had gone, you would have been stuck.
And the scary thing is, we were one road away from most people not being able to get in and out of the town, which would have prevented rescue from
Right.
coming in and helping people. I mean, again, people died.
Yeah.
It was a big deal. Yeah, so think about that too, guys. The whole have some backup food, maybe have a generator at your house. Like just start thinking along those lines. Not prepper level, but be able to survive for a few weeks at home. It's always a good idea to have some backup food and ways. Some people
Food,
have
water, batteries,
solar panels that go into a battery in your garage is always nice.
energy, heat if it's in the winter.
Yeah,
Yeah,
have
you gotta
lots
think
of
about those things.
magazines. You gotta all of a sudden, culturally, you can't use an electronic device anymore. What am I going to do? You got to read.
It's always amazing, like when you lose power, and you're like, what are we going to do? And like the first 20 ideas you come up with all involve electricity.
Yeah.
It takes time to get to remind yourself, oh, that's right, we have no electricity, so we have to think of some non-electricity activity to do, and it's hard.
Yeah, we lost power for days. I was turning lights on, and oh my god, it's like you just can't do it. And there it is. Okay. Thank you, Ian.
Okay, very good. Let me stop the recording.
I'm going to go.
Boom.
Normally, I don't have to leave this early, but my wife is away on a work trip, and I have to pick up my son from school. It's crazy. He gets out at 2:30.
You need some after-school activity.
Oh, man. We try, Steve. Everything is crazy expensive.
Chess club, something.
He is doing school activities. They basically, you pay to have people watch them.
Yeah.
There isn't like stuff like the chess club for him to have something
How
to
come?
do. I don't know. I don't know. They don't even tell you. All right, so everybody have a great.
Very good.
Hope everybody's having a great week. I'll see some of you on the live stream on Friday. So I will come out with information about Nauticon very, very soon, because now that it's landed. And if you want to give us an email, give us some feedback on the decisions that we're making, that's great. I'll give you a place to vent and complain if you want to. It is what it is, though. I'm doing this conference for our patrons and for listeners of the SGU. That's why we're doing it, because people wanted a place to socialize and have fun and a way to get together every year or so. So that's our number one goal. We want to deliver on that. And did we have a great time last year? It was the best conference I ever went to.
A lot of fun.
It was amazingly fun. Everyone had a brilliant time. George Rob's sing along was like, I'm still thinking about it. It's been almost a year, and I'm still looking back on that. It was what a wonderful experience. So please do consider coming, and the details will come out soon. And I'll see you guys soon.
See you, Jay.
See you, Jay. By the way, there was a little bit of a actually. Oh wait, this didn't. So the melting ocean ice does affect sea level, but very minutely.
Very minutely.
So
yeah.
apparently, it's because most of it's like fresh water.
Okay.
And so then it goes
Whatever.
into salty sea, and then yada yada yada. So it's like apparently it's 1 millimeter over the last 20 years or something, 1996 to 2017.
Yeah.
So
years.
not a massive increase, but still, just
There's
in case we
always
get an
some
email.
nuance.
Yeah.
There's always some nuance.
Just in case we get an email. So there. All right, let me fix up this camera. So we'll go into the TikToks. Stand by, everybody. Here's some background music, maybe. Actually, no. You just sit there.
Also, can get rid of the Windows pop-up on the comment screen.
Oh, is that there? Yeah. Okay, there's that. Let me fix that thing. Do you have a preference of which one to go?
Hit
to?
me. Whatever.
All right, let me just fix actually this layout for the TikTok. Oops. All right, and let us move on to. Let's see. We didn't talk about the ape thing, but never mind. We'll do that for next week.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, we'll go with this guy first. This freaking guy over here. Boom, boom, boom.
This fucking guy.
This fucking guy.
All right.
Okay, here we go. Let me hit that. Let me hit that. I'll scroll back.
Well, I'll take this one. Why is pork bad for you? Well, that's easy. It's loaded with parasites. It's loaded with toxins. It's loaded with parasites that are resilient to even the highest of heat, so they don't die. They still get in you. It causes terrible swelling, allergies, closing of the throat, swelling of the eyes, causes your skin to break out in tremendous hives. It screws up your digestion, buries parasites in the linings of your intestines that can burrow right through. And after all of that, it creates fire. Because poof, you burn up in fire in hell when God throws you there for eating it.
Okay. I think we'll end it right there. All right, we're rolling.
So, is parasites in pork really that dangerous, that bad for you? No, it isn't. But yes, there is known parasites that do tend to infect pork. It's called trichinella, causes the disease trichinosis. It's very rare in developed nations because pretty much everything he said about it is incorrect in that it is very effectively killed by heating. The way you get trichinella is by eating undercooked or raw pork. So don't do that. So here, how do you prevent getting trichinosis from eating pork? One, heat it and use a thermometer so that the internal temperature of the meat gets up to 165 degrees C. Some references say 160 degrees or 165 if you're eating game meat, because game meat also can have trichinella in it. But if you get it up to 165, you're pretty much covered. So yes, heat will kill the larvae of the trichinella. You can also kill them by freezing them. So if you're freezing your meat, you need to, first of all, it should be cut into 6-inch or thinner steaks or chunks. You don't want it to be too thick, then it won't freeze down to the middle. And you need to freeze it down to 5 degrees Fahrenheit, or I think that translates to around negative 10 or 15 degrees Celsius for 20 days, right? So if you freeze your pork for 20 days in a cold enough temperature, that will also kill the larvae. So those are the two ways to do it. But basically, if you cook your meat enough, if you cook it thoroughly, And if you want to be sure, you use a meat thermometer, get up to 160 to 65 degrees. You don't have to worry about it. And that's why trichinella is very rare, in the United States and other developed nations. Other things you want to do is be careful when you're handling raw meat, specifically raw pork. So don't, cut up your pork on a cutting board and then cut up your vegetables on the same cutting board, right? You always want to use a separate cutting board for the meat. You want to always clean everything, the counter, the cutting board, the knife, any instruments that you use very thoroughly to make sure there's no cross-contamination, right? So heat your meat, you can freeze it, be clean so you don't have cross-contamination, and you can safely eat pork without running any significant risk of getting any parasites, specifically trichinella. The other thing about God being angry at people for eating pork, I guess that depends on your particular religious beliefs, and I'm not going to comment on that.
Very good. I think you said 165C, but you meant 165 Fahrenheit,
Is
right?
it Fahrenheit?
Yeah, because I think 165C is like hella hot, right? Isn't that right, chat? Chat is also our European chatters are yelling at us. I think.
I was going to look it up before we did it.
Yeah.
What would that be? Like 400 or something?
160. Well, yeah, 74 degrees Celsius is 165 Fahrenheit. So 2 Fahrenheit. 165 is 329 Fahrenheit.
Yeah, which is not crazy.
It's not crazy, actually. Yeah, but that's like, but it's internal, right? Isn't it 165 Fahrenheit,
Yeah,
like the
see.
internal? Yeah, 165 F.
It is C. It is Fahrenheit. It is
Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
Can we? You want to just do? Actually, I meant Fahrenheit or like whatever. Because I'll pop it in if you want.
What do you want me to say?
Just say. I'll just like pop it in. It's like, correction is 165 Fahrenheit.
Right. Okay. So actually, correction there. I meant to say 160 to 165 degrees Fahrenheit for the internal temperature of the pork.
Cool. All right. So I'll just pop that in. Thank you, European chatters. They're like, wait a minute.
Wait.
All right. We got
Because we
another.
cook meat at 400 degrees.
Yeah, that's true. But I guess, the internal.
Yeah.
That would be pretty dry, I think, if we had a 400 degrees. Water boils.
That's
at
not that hot
100°C.
then. If you're getting to 165 internal
It is
temperature
pretty,
for your
yeah,
meat,
because it's 74 degrees
That
Celsius.
is not that hot.
Yeah, right? 74 degrees Celsius is 165. Yeah, not that hot.
so it's actually pretty damn easy to kill.
You'd think, yeah, pretty
Trichinella.
quick.
It's not as magically resistant.
I
to
mean,
heat.
especially if you had chopped pork, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's going to be quick. Some
Yeah.
Canadians, too. Yeah, whatever. 165 is what I set my hot tub to. Oh, see, now you're parasite-free. Got Michael Bile. All right, this is another parasite guy. So let me hit record. All right, here we go. Stand by, unmute.
You might have a parasitic infection if these symptoms sound familiar to you. 90% of Americans have parasites. Hi there. If you're new here, I'm Drew Canoli, and I'm on a mission to transform 1 million lives. Here are 7 symptoms that you may have a parasite infection. Number 1, unexplained digestive issues. 2, you have inexplicable fatigue and exhaustion, even if you're getting enough sleep. It's like sleep doesn't even help. 3, neurological or psychological symptoms like strange mood swings, personality shifts, memory issues. Even grinding your teeth when you sleep can be a symptom of parasites. 4, skin issues like mysterious rashes or itchiness. 5, unexplained weight loss or weight gain with different nutritional issues that you weren't aware of before. 6, unexplained muscular or joint pain. 7, unexplained headaches. And if this sounds like you, don't worry, there is hope. As you start out on your journey to removing parasites, what I like to do is I just simply add papaya seeds, pumpkin seeds, fennel seeds, flax seeds, watermelon seeds. You're not going to grow a watermelon in your stomach. And then bonus, garlic and pineapple are also great for this. All of these things can stop parasites in their tracks. I also highly recommend getting tested, getting a stool test by an experienced functional medicine doctor or a healthcare practitioner, Chinese medicine doctor, whoever it is for you, for a full parasite cleanse.
All right. Okay, let me move to this one. I will say his etiquette of looking off camera is weird if he's introing himself. He should look at the camera. Anyway. Moving on. All right, we're rolling.
So don't do anything that guy said. What he's saying is dangerous nonsense. So first of all, that list of symptoms that he gave, from neurological symptoms to digestive symptoms, if you're having any of those things, you should see your doctor and go see a real doctor. You don't have to see somebody who specializes in weird things or parasites or whatever. Just see your doctor, right? If you're having unexplained headaches, yeah, that's a serious symptom. You should be evaluated for that. If you're having undiagnosed, serious, continuous gastrointestinal symptoms, you should see a doctor for that. What you should not do is assume that some guy on the internet has diagnosed you with these unspecified parasites. I wonder what parasites he's talking about. He doesn't say. They never do. When they talk about parasites or toxins, they never specify which ones they're talking about because they're not talking about anything specifically. They don't know what they're talking about. Right? If you have a specific parasitic infection that would need to be diagnosed, it would need to be treated specifically with medication. You're not going to treat it with a cleanse or with seeds or whatever. That will not treat an actual parasitic infection. And if you have any of the symptoms that he listed that probably isn't a parasitic infection, that wouldn't even make my list of things that are likely to be a cause of like if you have unexplained headaches, if you live in a Western developed nation, a parasite is a very unlikely cause of having an unexplained headache. If you live in other parts of the world, it's more likely. But if you live in the United States where I live, I've never seen it. I've never seen a single case. That's 30 years of being a neurologist, despite having imaged thousands of people, which would 100% diagnose if there was an actual parasite living in your brain, for example. So it's not parasites. What this guy is doing is just, he's just being the guru thing. He's using this simplistic algorithm. You have any of these common symptoms that a lot of people have, or symptoms that actually, require medical attention, but basically a broad list of symptoms, which essentially could be anyone could see themselves in one or more of those symptoms. Then you have this unspecified syndrome, parasites, again, without naming what they are, and then, prescribes some dietary change or something. Not that eating seeds is a bad thing, but it's not going to cure your parasites, and it's not how you should be treating or addressing those specific symptoms. So when you hear gurus on the internet like that, just ignore them. If you're having new, unexplained, or serious symptoms, see an actual doctor.
Very good, very good. Okay. Stop recording there and there. All right.
It's parasites, Ian.
Everything is parasites. It's parasites all the way down.
Yeah. That's the one cause of all disease nonsense.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or it's fungus, or it's toxins, or whatever. It's oxidative stress,
right,
or whatever. It's this one thing that I know about. It explains all of your non-specific symptoms.
But all this trash that we're throwing out, you should eat that. All these watermelon seeds that you shouldn't eat, you should eat. So it's like, what? Was a shill for big granola.
Big granola.
Big gorp.
Do people eat flax seeds? I thought you only use them to plant, flax.
No, I've had flax. You ground it up.
You got to grind it up.
Otherwise, I don't think you digest it. You have to grind it, and then you can put it in smoothies. It's
Okay.
fine. I don't really know what it does. It's probably just from, hippie crap that they're like,
hippie
dippies, and they just put it in, and you're like, all right, whatever. It's $8, I guess. Get down the drain. All right, let's move on to another parasite.
Oh boy, Parasite Week.
Yeah, it's really
somebody who actually has a parasite in their brain.
Quite literally, the thumbnail of this live stream was the brain worm. All right, let me hit record. Flax seeds and smoothies and oatmeal, good prebiotic fiber, says Gut Microbiome from TikTok. What's up, Gut Microbiome? Yeah, that's what I think I've heard too. It's fiber. Fiber's good. Yeah,
I like fiber.
Why not? Get you moving.
Oatmeal's good fiber by itself.
Yeah, that's true.
I like oatmeal.
Yeah, oatmeal's yummy. All right, we're rolling.
We are mass poisoning this generation of kids. We saw this explosion of neurodevelopmental disorders. So ADD, ADHD, speech delay, language delay, tics, sleep disorders, Tourette syndrome, narcolepsy, ASD, autism, all these diseases that prior to 1989, we never heard of them.
Right.
We didn't know anybody who had them. And then all the autoimmune diseases suddenly exploded that year. Juvenile diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, these exotic diseases like Crohn's disease and lupus. Suddenly everybody, all these kids are sick. And the allergic diseases suddenly appeared. Again, in 1989, in that area, early 90s, peanut allergies. I had 11 siblings, 70 cousins. I didn't know anybody with a food allergy. Why do 5 of my kids have these anaphylactic allergies? Why?
I think that's probably good,
Yeah,
right?
it's more
it's
than
plenty.
enough,
All right, we're rolling.
So RFK Jr., is a known crank contrarian when it comes to these kind of health issues. His views are well outside the mainstream. He's not taken seriously by scientists or doctors for a reason, because he speaks a lot of nonsense. There's a lot to unpack there, and I can't get to everything that he threw out. But essentially, he's trying to make this case that all of these diseases suddenly started increasing in the late 1980s and 1990s. Therefore, there must be some environmental cause. He doesn't say what he thinks it is, but we all know he's talking about vaccines, right? That's like always his big boogeyman in terms of what's causing all these things, especially autism. Let's talk about the autism numbers specifically, and then this is sort of representative of everything that he's talking about there, although obviously there's a lot of different details with the different specific diseases. So did autism suddenly increase in the 1980s, 1990s? Again, he makes this blanket statement. No one ever heard about it before, like as if it didn't exist. So that's completely wrong. These entities all existed. They were recognized. They were identified. They were diagnosed. Maybe they were used, they were called different names, or we didn't know specifically what they were. But these clinical entities all go back into, 100, 200 years ago, whenever we, had physicians who made these clinical observations and were able to document it. But then the question is, why were these diagnoses increasing? So it's definitely true that, like, say, autism diagnoses have been increasing since the 1980s. But does that mean that autism itself is increasing, or just our ability to diagnose it has been increasing? And that's a very interesting, specific scientific question that has been researched extensively. And what the research finds is a number of things. One is that there are a number of other things going on that would increase the number of people with an autism spectrum disorder diagnosis, even without any actual change in the incidence or prevalence of ASD. So one is an expansion of the diagnostic criteria, right? This also happened with ADHD, for example, which is something else that he threw up on the list. So if you expand the criteria for the diagnosis, then it's going to capture more people and the numbers will go up. Another one is what we call diagnostic substitution. Kids in the 1970s, are you saying that they didn't have autism? Or is it possible that a middle schooler in the 1970s with autism would have been diagnosed with something else? And that something else is today diagnosed as autism. And so that's called diagnostic substitution. And in fact, that absolutely has happened as well, is that other diagnoses have been decreasing as ASD has been increasing, because the diagnostic patterns are changing. And then another big factor is what we call surveillance. We're looking for it more, right? You're only going to diagnose people with any condition if you're looking for it. And that has multiple components. So one is, are people or family members of those with the condition seeking out a diagnosis? Are they presenting to doctors, professionals who could make the diagnosis? And are professionals looking for it? Are they doing the tests, doing the evaluations that would result in that diagnosis? That also relates a lot to stigma. If the diagnosis has a stigma attached to it, people will not seek it out as often. They don't want the diagnosis. For example, autism carried the stigma of the refrigerator moms, right? So back in the day, 60s, 70s, it was thought to be due to bad parenting. Same thing with ADHD. There's a huge stigma attached to it. You're a bad parent if you have a kid with ADHD or autism. And so that stigma prevents people from coming forward and saying, I want my kid tested. I want him to get a label. I want him to have a diagnosis. On the other side, if services are attached to the diagnosis, then people seek it out. And that's been happening as well. If you're in the public school system and your child has a diagnosis of autism, for example, then the law requires that the school provides for them accommodations, right? So, and resources and services. So if you want to avail yourself of all of those services, you want the diagnosis. So it's the opposite of having a stigma attached to it. There's a benefit attached to having the diagnosis. So of course, diagnoses have been increasing. So how do we know, however, if there's any real increase hiding in that data? Well, there's a number of ways you can do that. You could look and see if at different age groups, if you look at and apply the consistent diagnostic criteria across different age groups, you can see, well, is it increasing in younger populations, or are there just as many 50-year-olds with autism as there are 10-year-olds with autism in terms of the percentage of the population? You can also, if you have studies where accurate medical records were kept as part of that database, or you just have medical records going back decades, then what you could do is, all right, we're going to take a look at the medical records that are available from the 80s, from the 90s, from the 2000s, and we are going to apply the same diagnostic criteria to all of these records and see if there's an increase over time. And guess what? When you do that with autism, the incidence is flat. It's the same. There's the same percentage, the same number of people with autism 20 years ago as there is today, if you apply the same surveillance and diagnostic criteria, right? But of course, the number of people who are walking around with the diagnosis is dramatically increased because we're looking for it more and we're diagnosing it more, and there are services attached to it, and we've expanded the diagnostic criteria. That's it. But people like RFK, who I don't know if he just doesn't understand this or if he doesn't want to understand it because it doesn't fit his political narrative. But for people like him, they just look at the raw numbers and then they manufacture this idea that, well, there's got to be something environmental that's causing it. Yet there's no evidence that that's the case, right? There's no evidence that there is any environmental factor that's causing autism, which is a genetic disorder, right? Autism is genetic. The evidence overwhelmingly shows that. There is no evidence linking vaccines to autism. RFK thinks that there is. He's wrong. He's wrong because he's not a scientist and he doesn't know what he's talking about. He has a political narrative that he is pushing. He has a story that he's pushing. That's it. The scientific community has looked at this in detail, and not just in the United States. You know, there are other countries in the world, and other countries have their own medical professions and medical organizations, and they look at the data too. And so this question of vaccines and autism, for example, or just autism incidence, for example, has been looked at independently in Sweden and Japan and Korea and countries around the world, and they all come up with the same answer, and that is, it's not really increasing, it's a diagnostic artifact, and two, it's not correlating with vaccines, any vaccine at all. Vaccines do not cause autism. But RFK will never be convinced of that because that is his political narrative, and he's not a scientist, and he doesn't look at the data objectively and thoroughly the way actual experts do. In cases like this, listen to the experts. Don't listen to guru politicians who have something to sell you.
Alrighty, very good.
Bam!
Bam! Get dunked on.
RFK, man, I fucking hate that guy.
Yeah,
he's such a crank, man. We've been talking about him for decades. Like, just go to Science-Based Medicine, look up RFK Jr. Long before he was running for politics or whatever, he has been a crank for a long time. The guy's a nut job. And then beyond the autism and vaccines thing, he's just an all-purpose conspiracy theorist now.
Yeah.
Like, he's just gone off the deep end.
Totally.
You know, I know there are some people who like they don't like the two-party system, and they like, you know, his sort of third-party, outside-the-box kind of thinking or whatever.
It's way out
okay,
the box.
whatever. But the guy doesn't mean the guy's not a crank and a conspiracy theorist. The guy's bizarre. He's a weirdo. You know, he belongs nowhere near the levers of power.
Yeah.
Imagine if that guy were actually president. Oh my God. Not only that, you know, he's also now, he decided that forget all of the environmental justice he worked for as a lawyer all these years. Now he's cozying up to Donald Trump, on this promise that he'll get some kind of a, cabinet membership, appointment. Imagine like if he was in charge of like the CDC or Health and Human Services, what a disaster that would be. You put talk about the fox watching the chickens. You're going to put a pseudoscientist in charge of America's health infrastructure. That would be a disaster.
Yeah, that
an
would be really
absolute
bad.
disaster. That guy is dangerous. He is literally dangerous.
Yeah, I know somebody was saying that his work with the river keepers when he was doing all that environmental work, which was
He was fun when he was a lawyer working
Yeah.
for environmental justice, whatever. But then he just went right off the deep end. The thing is, it's one of those classic. If your only tool is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
Right. So he was basically started. He came to, and I wrote specifically about this, and I think I used RFK as the example. So people have come to the anti-vaccine community from a number of different directions. There's the alternative medicine gurus who just hate everything mainstream medicine. Then there are the conspiracy theorists who just don't trust the government or institutions. And then another pathway is the environmentalists who think that everything is an environmental disease, right? Everything is caused by toxins in the environment because that's their thing. That's what they do. And so when the idea that, well, environmental mercury is causing autism, they were all over that. They jumped in on that. And then that sort of sucked them into the whole mercury vaccines cause autism thing. And that's how RFK, I think, went down that rabbit hole from the environmental angle. If he had just stayed being an environmental attorney, working for legitimate environmental issues, he could have had a very prominent career and would have been a respected environmentalist, and he could be spending his time fighting global warming or whatever. He decided to become a freaking crank instead and just cause no end of nonsense and mayhem. It's tragic. It's actually tragic. But, he is what he is,
Yep. All right. I mean, we had the EpiPen. Well, not the EpiPen. What is this one? That was the Rogan Trump global cooling.
What did he say?
That one?
We can do that next week.
All right, we'll save it.
We'll save it for next week.
Save
I did
it.
my quota.
Yeah, you did the quota.
Right.
3. 3 for 3.
I got a show to prepare
That's
for.
true.
Tonight.
Any secrets of what's going to happen on the show tonight?
Actually, I haven't put it
Spoilers?
together yet.
Oh, okay.
I'm still waiting for everybody to send me what they want to talk
Yeah,
about.
that's true. Mm-hmm.
So, and I haven't picked my item yet. I have a number of things to choose from.
There's a lot. If you guys
Always a
haven't
lot of stuff going on.
if you guys haven't seen or read Steve's blog today, let's see. There's Neurologica, potential of AI and CRISPR. Also, science-based medicine. Actually, it was the why is ADHD on the rise? Funny enough.
Right. Yeah. So I was already preloaded with a lot of that information.
Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of good stuff.
Same
on there,
thing.
so go check it out.
It probably isn't.
Yeah.
It's just that the diagnoses are on the rise for all the same reasons that I laid out for autism. It's increased diagnostic criteria, increased surveillance, decreased stigma, services attached to it. But also with ADHD, there's another element, and that is that it is a continuum, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's basically a bell curve of executive function. You take people at the low end of that bell curve and say they have ADHD, but where do you draw the line, right? And that depends upon social context, right? If you don't need to be able to marshal a lot of attention and inhibit your impulses for long periods of time, you may not notice you have it's not that big of a deal that you have ADHD. It still does affect your executive function. I'm not saying it doesn't matter at all, but it really comes out when you put kids in school for 5 hours a day or whatever. And so it's very context dependent how it manifests. And our society increasingly sort of requires a lot of executive function, which is another reason why the manifestations are increasing. But ADHD is real. It's a brain disorder.
Yeah, it is.
You
real.
can see it in the brain, even though the diagnosis is still clinical, because there's a difference between a diagnostic study that's useful for research and useful clinically. In order to be useful clinically, you have to have pretty high sensitivity and specificity, which means you need to have a pretty homogeneous population, meaning they all have the same thing, as opposed to a clinical entity where it's defined more by the signs and symptoms, and they may have different things that are causing it. They may have different, neuroanatomical correlates. But with ADHD, it's just we could do fMRI scan and we could see statistically people who have the clinical syndrome of ADHD, their brains function differently than healthy controls. But in an individual person, it's not sensitive or specific enough to be a useful diagnostic tool. You're better off just using clinical criteria. Anyway, it's complicated, but if you're a guru like RFK, you can just say it's increasing. Something's got to be going on. Who ever heard of this before? I've never. None of my cousins had it when I was growing up.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Okay,
There we go.
Probably did.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, one of our patrons said, California here, the floods are very useful for putting out all the fires. It's like,
Right.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Right.
That's,
Who was it? Bill Maher actually at one point.
Oh.
I think more than one point suggested it's like we're having all this flooding in the east
Oh, no.
and all these droughts and fires in the west. Can't we just build a huge pipeline, just drain all that water from the east to the west, solve two problems at once?
Oh, Bill, not the sharpest knife in the
I mean,
crayon box.
theoretically, sure, but
God. Yeah, whatever.
logistically, probably not.
Oh, well. Anyway, so I think that's it for this week. We'll see you next week, maybe this Friday.
Yes.
For the live stream. Check out the episode.
We'll be streaming on Friday.
That's right. Check out the episode dropping on Saturday, as does every Saturday. Any other things? We have some merch that we actually got to discuss. The new merch that's going to come out hopefully soon. That Jay and I have been talking about, and we'll talk with Steve about that.
Yeah, we're looking at new merch.
And if you haven't already bought tickets for the extravaganza in DC, go ahead and do so. I think we're still figuring out any other stuff that's happening in DC.
There will be a live show. Jay and I were just talking about when that's going to be
Private
based
show,
upon
yeah.
travel times and stuff. So hopefully we'll have it locked in soon.
Yeah, we'll have that for you coming soon. Anything else? I think that's good.
I think we're
We'll
done.
leave you there. All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Sayonara.
Sayonara. Every Saturday, I mow the lawn and listen to SGU first. Very good. All right. Bye-bye. Ending music. There was an ending.
All right.